Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Concepts of Truth International's first Youth Panel side event with the Commission for Social Development at the United Nations. My name is Millie Lace, and I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I'm the founder of Concepts of Truth. We're a USA-based nonprofit since 2001. We provide professional counseling to youth and families, and we offer a 24/7 first responder helpline for reproductive loss and prevention. We educate and train in a mental and sexual health model, sustaining families and equipping the whole person to make healthy life choices to empower future generations. Today, we're honored to have these wonderful youth representatives present to you social protection through education, sustaining families in holistic health, which contributes to the priority theme of the 57th Commission for Social Development. Before I introduce our moderator this morning, I want to share a personal story about the importance of education. My mother could not read or write because she had to quit school after 1 month to help her brother cut wood to sell it for food. Her father had passed away, and there was no one to provide for the family. My mother always taught me to value education. As Nelson Mandela said, education is the most powerful weapon which we can use to change the world. My mom was in a vulnerable situation, but she had a loving family of support, filled with hope, just to do the best they knew how. But she wanted better for her children. I think we all want better. Our world is in turmoil with selfishness and despair. Hurting people need resources. Youth and families need education and models to help them make healthy choices. Concepts of Truth's identity is Christian, and we're here to serve all faiths and work with all people, all nations, to share our expertise and our resources with the world to help sustain families in holistic health. Our moderator today is Kason Mano. He is 16 years old from Arkansas, and he's in his junior year of homeschooling. This is his first year as a UN youth representative for Concepts of Truth International, and he is involved in youth ministry at his church, and he enjoys spending time reading, writing, and telling stories. I'm going to turn it over to Kason.
Good morning. While social protection is designed to prevent poverty and to support social inclusion, social policies must address such multidimensional forms of material and emotional poverty as limited access to education, vulnerability, isolation, and emotional suffering. Concepts of Truth International thus aims to educate the whole person to make healthy life choices, reduce vulnerability to sexual exploitation and unwanted pregnancies, and empower future generations to address the complex issues of inequality and social inclusion. Today you will hear 4 presentation papers from panelists who will discuss education and holistic health, healing from sexual trauma, the whole person learning theory for the youth, and reproductive loss for men and women. Spoken word poetry will be presented by 2 of our panelists this morning, highlighting our theme today. Our panel, ages 17 through 19, has collaborated with experts to explore the means by which education supports social protection. At the end of today's panel, we will open the floor to a brief Q&A, so please hold your questions until the end. Our first panelist is Peter Wolf. He's 17 years old and he lives in Pennsylvania. He is a homeschool junior. He teaches religious education to 6th grade students in his local parish, founded and ran a project to raise money for a hospital in Peru, is active in DFW speech and debate as a tournament champion, an intern, and a published author. He is also a published contributor to Enter Stage Right, and this is his first year as a UN Youth Representative for Concepts of Truth International. His mentor is Josephine Tyne, JD, UN Representative, Concepts of Truth International.
American actor Michael J. Fox once thoughtfully noted that family is not an important thing. It's everything. Family offers shelter, order, and stability. It is a bedrock of the community and is a fundamental group unit of society that is entitled to social protection as a human right. Social protection is defined as a set of policies and programs designed to reduce and prevent poverty and vulnerability throughout the life cycle. Poverty can be a social, political, and cultural phenomenon, and the UN's Sustainable Development Goals commit countries to implement nationally appropriate social protection systems to eradicate poverty in all of its forms by 2030, and to ensure that the poor and vulnerable enjoy effective access to health and other social services. Thus, social protection systems play a particularly important role in breaking the intergenerational cycle of poverty and vulnerability for women and children, while improving their overall health and well-being. Sustaining women and children in holistic health is paramount to preserving the family, and preserving families is necessary to sustaining our communities. Families are the first institutions that humans are exposed to. Children grow up learning how to function in this world from their parents. Unfortunately, this fundamental aspect of human society is falling apart. International communities are realizing that the well-being of parents is frequently overlooked with social policies and programs, and that children need to grow up in a loving and joyful family environment. Due to the pivotal role that family has played over the course of history, it is vital that we as members of this international body seek to preserve and protect families through holistic health and social education. Today, I will examine some of the challenges that families face, the causes of these problems, and most importantly, the type of education that is necessary to reduce the family's vulnerability and restore its prominence. The first challenge to the family is the declining regard for permanent relationships, resulting in split families. Divorce rates have climbed across the globe over the last few decades. It's estimated that 48% of American and British children lived in divorced, single-parent homes by age 16. In the United States alone, there's been a 20% drop in the number of children living with two married parents. These findings highlight an alarming trend. Marriage and family life are slowly but surely declining. The International Federation for Family Development, along with a number of other members of the civil society, thus recognize that families are crucial to social development and that fathers importantly contribute to the family's well-being. Psychotherapists have found that young children dealing with divorce experience anger and frustration and are at increased risks for mental health and behavioral problems. In his book, Father Hunger, Douglas Wilson writes that fatherlessness is, quote, a rot that is eating away at the modern soul. Most of our families are starving for fathers, even if dad is around, and there's a huge cost to our children and our society because of it, end quote. A second challenge to the stability of the family is the vulnerability of children due, among other things, to infant and child mortality. Children need to be nourished and cared for. But unfortunately, there are many who aren't protected. An estimated 6.3 million children under the age of 15 years died in 2017. 5.4 million of them were under the age of 5, and 2.5 million of those children died within the first few months of life. This translates into 15,000 under 5 deaths per day. Educating young women lowers child mortality. According to UNESCO, maternal education accounts for half of all lives saved through lower child mortality rates. UNESCO refers to the dramatic decline in preventable child death cases as one of the most significant achievements in human history. Yet, much progress remains to be seen. Every year, roughly 56 million babies are aborted worldwide, and about 800,000 of these are in the U.S. alone, with over 4% of those occurring after 16 weeks. Ultrasounds reveal that at 16 weeks, an unborn baby is able to move about, suck its thumb, blink its eyes, and kick its legs. At 16 weeks, a baby's heart and circulatory system are fully functional. In a survey of American women, researchers found that more than half said that they were rushed or uncertain about abortion, and 64% said that they felt pressured by others to abort. As Samantha Martinez will further explain, we need to educate women and men on these important issues so that they can make wise decisions. A third challenge to the family is women in vulnerable situations. Women and girls are vulnerable to a variety of physical and sexual abuses that are often fueled by pornography. Global estimates published by the World Health Organization show that about one in women worldwide have experienced either physical and or sexual violence in their lifetime. Life News reported that as of 2017, 4.8 million women and children were sexually exploited as part of a $99 billion sex trafficking industry. Of these, approximately 71% were women and girls, and of those, about half were forced to abort their babies. Christine Bianca will address these issues in more detail in her discussion of education in sexual trauma. Abortion, child mortality, pornography, sexual violence, and trafficking all contribute to the breakdown of family. Children are harmed, sex is treated as a profitable market, and millions of people are violated. These problems will not go away unless we make an active effort to stop them. We need to educate our society in a manner that will sustain families. Lack of education in the current climate of pervasive pornography and promiscuity leads to depression, sexually transmitted diseases, and teen pregnancies, as Sophia Romeo will explain in more depth in her talk on social protection through education of youth. Concepts of Truth International offers solutions. Concepts of Truth sexual health curriculum promotes families by, among other things, teaching the whole person theory to teens to prevent the emotional damage caused by the hookup culture. Concept of Truth's approach inhibits the spread of sexually transmitted diseases and discourages unwanted pregnancies. Additionally, Concept of Truth educates individuals on the dignity of life. Every life matters, and keeping children, the most innocent and precious forms of life, from falling victim to the traps of poverty and abortion should be our first priority. Furthermore, Concept of Truth provides counseling to those who have suffered such consequences of the broken family as a result of reproductive loss and sexual trauma. Together, we must educate communities on what a healthy family looks like. Healthy families work together, learn together, grow together, and stick together. As a homeschooled student with 6 siblings, I've experienced this firsthand. There is no problem that my brothers and I can't tackle when we do it together. If we want to sustain families in holistic health, the first step is teaching them how to learn, grow, and operate as a unit. The family is the bedrock of society. If we can strengthen that bedrock, then we can create a greater society, community, and legacy for the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Having 4 siblings myself, I truly see the value in supporting one another, learning with one another, and contributing to this world together. As Peter pointed out, it's clear that we need to preserve families in holistic health in order to sustain our communities and take active steps toward combating challenges to social inclusion. In the next presentation, you will hear how specifically educating youth in holistic health will provide for social protection. Our next panelist is Sophia Romeo, who is age 18 and is a homeschool student from New Jersey. She has recently volunteered to travel abroad to teach young students on the importance of the legal system. Sophia has been involved in numerous Concepts of Truth International events and now works as the UN activities representative. She enjoys reading, writing, and playing with her dog. Her mentor is Millie Lace, MSE, LPC, founder of Concepts of Truth International.
The foundation of every state is the education of its youth. It is because I agree with renowned Greek philosopher Diogenes that I promote the education of youth as a method of social protection. As the United Nations Population Fund reports, quote, every young person will one day have life-changing decisions to make about their sexual and reproductive health. Yet research shows that the majority of adolescents lack the knowledge required to make those decisions responsibly, leaving them vulnerable to coercion, sexually transmitted infections, and unintended pregnancy, end quote. Concepts of Truth International seeks to fill an educational void and equip youth to value themselves and make wise decisions with regard to their own bodies. Let's examine the status quo. There's a current tilt toward the destructive hookup culture in much of the world. This trend is often represented in modern-day TV shows, movies, and even music. This kind of lifestyle negatively affects youth emotionally, physically, and morally. The results often leave women and sometimes men vulnerable to sexual assault, domestic violence, low self-esteem, and depression. New Yorker magazine observes that many recognize that the epidemic of casual sex is taking over society, and that, quote, is demeaning women and wreaking havoc on our ability to establish stable, fulfilling relationships, end quote. This becomes particularly acute when combined with the growing consumption of pornography and the absence of education about its harmful effects, which will also be discussed by Christine Policio. Lack of education also leads to disease and other physical consequences. According to Forbes in 2018, the U.S. continues to hold the title for highest rates of sexually transmitted diseases or sexually transmitted infections, STDs, in the modern world. STDs are responsible for nearly $16 billion in preventable healthcare costs. Forbes concludes that this crisis is due to a multitude of factors, including the lack of education and awareness of STDs and issues related to sexual health. The World Health Organization reports that worldwide more than 1 million STIs are acquired every day. Not only do STIs have immediate physical consequences, they also have long-term effects on pregnant women and the newborn babies. This includes mother-to-child transmission of STIs, which can result in stillbirth, neonatal death, low birth weight and prematurity, sepsis, pneumonia, and neonatal conjunctivitis, as well as congenital deformities. These global statistics only begin to scratch the surface of how necessary a solid health curriculum is to sustaining not only young people, but the entire population. Teen pregnancies are another tragic consequence of the lack of holistic education in sexually active youth. The World Health Organization reports that worldwide, approximately 16 million girls aged 15 to 19 and 2.5 million girls under 16 give birth each year in developing regions. Complications during pregnancy and childbirth are the leading cause of death for 15 to 19-year-olds globally. Every year, some 3.9 million girls aged 15 to 19 undergo unsafe abortions. According to the United States Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, teen pregnancies result in substantial social and economic costs for teen parents and the children. For example, pregnancy and birth are significant contributors to high school dropout rates among young girls. Only about 50% of teen mothers receive a high school diploma by the age of 22, whereas 90% of women who do not give birth during adolescence will graduate from high school. The CDC adds that the children of teenage mothers are more likely to have lower school achievement and drop out of high school, have more health problems, be incarcerated at some point during adolescence, and give birth as a teenager, as well as face unemployment as a young adult. Not only does teen pregnancy cost a teen mother, it clearly costs the child. Let's take a look at the state of sexual health in education, sexual health education in other countries, where the lack of sexual health education has resulted in pervasive problems. In China, for example, STDs are steadily on the rise. However, the topic of sex is largely taboo in the schools, so much so that it has become difficult for schools to implement sexual health curriculums without uproar from parents. Professor Jing Zhang of Beijing's Tsinghua University states that students take sex education classes to learn basic facts about sex safety, and this is the first time most of the students have ever taken such a class. This type of education is similarly absent in other countries. According to The Guardian, the subject of sex and sexuality is so sensitive in the Middle East that few formal education programs exist. In Latin America, Director of the Region for the UN Population Fund explains that if an 11-year-old girl arrives in the hospital pregnant, nobody says anything. Women and girls are dying because of poor sex education. The Guardian adds that across Latin America, despite the high rates of violence against women and the number of girls under 14 getting pregnant, sex education is not taught in most schools. Meanwhile, in Nigeria alone, The Guardian reports that more than 1 in 3 18-year-olds have already had a child or is pregnant. Clearly, an important solution to the problem at hand is the education of youth. In order to begin to address this epidemic, we need to employ multilateralism and become a unified front on the position of sex and health education. Deborah Tackman, a health educator of 40-plus years, puts it best when she describes the goal of sex education by saying the target has always been the same: help kids make wise decisions and keep themselves healthy. With this in mind, we can understand that proper sexual health education promotes better mental health while decreasing STIs and teen pregnancies. The World Health Organization states that counseling and behavioral interventions offer primary prevention against STIs, as well as against unintended pregnancies. Unfortunately, the lack of public awareness, lack of training, and widespread stigma around STIs remain barriers to greater and more effective uses of these interventions. The International Women's Health Coalition says that children and adolescents everywhere want and need information about their health and their rights and the skills to be safe and to respect others. This is where the whole person theory proves so valuable. The whole person approach to learning is the philosophy that one's sexuality is an integral part of the whole person. It was developed by Annalee McGraw, PhD, founder of the Educational Guidance Institute in Virginia. The whole person theory states that as whole persons, men and women possess a sexuality that is integrated in body, mind, heart, will, and conscience. The sexual domain is permeated by the intellectual, moral, emotional, physical, and social domains. Concepts of Truth's curriculum eliminates the stigma surrounding sex and educates youth holistically by teaching with the whole person theory at its core. The curriculum states that since sex involves one's sexuality, it is more than an isolated act. It is more than a bodily function, and it's not just a commodity to buy or sell. And since contraceptives do not always provide protection against STDs, sexual health education must appeal to the dispositions of the mind, heart, will, and conscience of the learner. Although some may want you to believe that handing young adults a handful of contraceptives and telling them to be careful is all that is required, it's not what's going to make a difference. What will make a difference is truly reaching out to young men and young women. The first step in the curriculum is to establish a rapport with the students. Why? Because to really teach us, you need to really reach us. The curriculum states that finding sexual health through purity and choosing to save sex for one monogamous bond is not merely about saying no to sexual activity, but saying yes to responsibility. This approach truly reaches the mind and heart of the individual young person and teaches that there is only one kind of safe sex, and that safe sex is for a lifetime. This comprehensive approach is unlike many one-dimensional strategies that have been tested and failed. This approach does not ignore sex. It doesn't ban sex. It doesn't simply provide some faulty protection. This approach truly reaches the mind and heart of the young person. The curriculum also says that young people can be reached through their hearts and challenged to become persons of character, capable of contributing not only to their own well-being, but to their communities and to their society. Former Prime Minister of the UK stated that the youth of a nation are the trustees of posterity. By educating children and young people to not only better understand their health, but to value, honor, and respect their bodies, we can effect change for generations to come. It is through this method that we can aim to achieve SDG 3, good health and well-being, SDG 4, quality education, and ultimately achieve social protection. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. Again, we see that education will be instrumental in maintaining social inclusion. Achieving SDG 4, good education, will be no easy task. However, we can recognize that good health education begins with education on how to value yourself. By working together, we can lead the youth in recognizing their value and treating themselves with respect and dignity. Next, we will hear a spoken word. Michaela Greco, age 18, lives in New Jersey and is currently obtaining her TEFL certification. This is her first year as a UN Youth Representative for Concepts of Truth International. She also teaches Spanish at the preschool level, enjoys being a leader on her dance team, and looks forward to studying international relations and diplomacy in the fall. Michaela will present a spoken word It's complicated.
For unbiased, judgment-free information about abortion and other resources, including financial assistance, please call toll-free 1-800-772-9100. Hi, this is Karen with Women First Hotline. How can I help you? Hi, I'm a complicated situation. I'm pregnant and in a loving, committed relationship with my job. I've looked into foster care, I've looked into daycare, but it all just feels so wrong. My child deserves my time and my attention, my love and my affection. I vowed I would wait until I could stay home. My family, they're gonna kill me. What if they leave me? Would I be enough alone? This is your choice, ma'am. If you're not ready to parent, don't go through. Never feel pressure to do anything you're not ready to do. Well, I am supposed to have a, but the truth is, I don't know. I'm afraid I'll feel guilty. Will I get depressed? I'm already pressed for time. I've always been told that this was a crime. You have nothing to worry about. The most common feeling after an abortion is relief. Only a small percentage of women are susceptible to grief. I've heard a lot of stories, though, of women who do this and end up not being able to live with themselves and feeling total disgust. But with all the news about my healthcare as a woman, I'm not sure who to trust. I just want to know the truth about my body. Is that too much to ask? It is your body. Feel empowered when you choose. The very best thing for your health is the very best thing to do. I just wish I knew what to do and didn't have to choose, or just had more help or more knowledge or more support in making the right choice. Is there a right choice? Ma'am? Ma'am, are you there? Although every experience with reproductive loss is different, having someone to talk to is a step to healing. Please call 1-866-482-LIFE today. Hi, this is Krista with Concepts of Truth International Helpline. How can I help you? Hi, I'm a complicated situation. I used to be pregnant, and now I'm not sure what to do. I'm not entirely sure what's true about my health, and by now I've learned that there's not one answer to this hell that I've walked into. Then you've come to the right place. I've had multiple abortions myself, and in my experience, it did not end my torment. It only prolonged what I felt. I wish I would have known that. I was promised I'd be relieved, aside from maybe feeling lost or sad. But I don't just feel the loss, and I don't just feel sad. I feel tormented, angry, guilty. I wish I could take it back. I was told it'll be better when it's over, but it wasn't. I can't sleep, I can't eat, and I don't want to be comforted. You're vulnerable right now. Please know we are here for you. We can email you resources, find you local support, and people to take care of you. Plus, if you would like, we can follow up to make sure you get the help that you need. But I do understand it is hard when you feel alone. But you are not alone. And we will walk with you through this grief and pain. You can face this. There's no need to withdraw. There is hope when we acknowledge the truth. And you have started your journey to healing with this first call.
Thank you, Michaela, for highlighting the complexity of everything that we are discussing today. Although it is complicated, Michaela points out the bottom line. We need to protect the vulnerable. This is how we can achieve social inclusion. This is how we can provide social protections. This is how we can sustain our world. Our next panelist is Samantha Martinez. Age 19, lives in New Jersey, and is a homeschool alumni in her second year of college studying social work. This is her second year as a UN representative for Concepts of Truth International, and she is excited to share her passion for enacting change in the world. She also loves music, spending time with her family, and cuddling with her dog. Her mentor is Jared Pingleton, Doctor of Psychology, clinical psychologist, author, and speaker.
I didn't know. No one told me. Quotes like these from thousands of callers on Concepts of Truth International Helpline indicate a need for education in the reproductive loss of abortion. Worldwide, since 1980, there have been over 1.5 billion abortions. These numbers represent both women and men, mothers and fathers, who possibly experience acute emotional trauma and often suffer for years, carrying regret and pain without support and healing. Many suffer from disenfranchised grief, suppressing these traumatic experiences and being deprived of the right to grieve, voiceless. The Suicide and Mental Health Association International describes disenfranchised grief as grief restricted by social pressure. We could also call it unrecognized loss, or call these women and men loss grievers. In my presentation today, I hope to educate you on this important topic and how understanding the need for recovery can help sustain families and future generations in holistic health. When grief after reproductive loss is disenfranchised, stuffed down, denied, or unrecognized, it will most likely resurface in various forms, causing long-term consequences, such as physical illness, psychological distress, dysfunctional relationships, stunted emotional and spiritual growth, depression, anxiety, addiction, and relationship problems. Long-term consequences are vast, and more are being uncovered through research and listening to the life experiences of post-abortive women. Trauma of the experience, for example, can be suppressed for many years before it resurfaces. A woman shared her story through the book, Complications, Abortion's Impact on Women. My personal trauma started 7 years after my abortion experience when I saw the ultrasound of my second pregnancy. The ultrasound technician said to me, "Oh, look, she's waving hello to you," and I wanted to bolt. It was not a blob of tissue, cluster of cells, or a product of conception. It was a baby. I started to have nightmares, depression, and extreme anxiety over the realization of what I had done, end quote. A study done by Priscilla K. Coleman observed women over a span of 8 years who experienced their first pregnancy, whether aborted or born. It was observed that women who underwent an abortion for their first pregnancy were 65% more likely to fall into clinical depression than those who had the child. Her study, published in the British Journal of Psychiatry, showed that women with a history of abortion have an 81% increased risk for mental health problems, and nearly 10% of the incidence of mental health problems was shown to be attributable to abortion. Furthermore, the National Center for Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder revealed that 94 out of 100 women suffered PTSD symptoms a few weeks after a traumatic event, and 30 out of 100 women reported still feeling the symptoms 9 months later. PTSD can surface long after the traumatic event has passed and tortures its victims with nightmares, flashbacks, restlessness, paranoia, and anxiety. In fact, according to Susan Babel, PhD, MFT, post-abortion stress syndrome is the name that has been given to the psychological after effects of abortion based on PTSD. Depression plunges the woman into sadness and feelings of isolation and utter hopelessness. Abortion can also produce traumatic effects for a man who has oftentimes been preparing himself mentally to become a father and then has to mourn his child. While the emotional impact on men is often overlooked, failure to address suppressed emotions following abortion can pose significant complications in the lives of the man and his spouse and their future family. Dr. Jared Pingleton, minister, author, and clinical psychologist, explains the typical grief coping styles for fathers, which include remaining silent, grieving secretly, taking physical legal action, immersing self in activity, acting out, medicating pain inappropriately, withdrawing emotionally, reaching out sexually, among many others. The social norm that discourages men from having a say in reproductive consequences also shames men from seeking counseling for emotional trauma, another form of disenfranchised grief. It is imperative that we end this stigma and encourage men to feel comfortable seeking counseling if they are suffering from reproductive loss or any other trauma. For both men and women, the experience of an abortion in a previous relationship was related to dysfunctional subsequent relationships and intimate partner violence. Among females, having an abortion during a continuing relationship was associated with increased levels of risk for various forms of sexual dysfunction, a 75% increased risk of money arguments, an 80% increased risk of conflict over the partner's relatives, and a 99% increased risk of arguing about the respondent's relatives. Men whose partners had an abortion were more likely to report jealousy at a 96% greater risk and conflict about drugs. These results suggest that abortion may play a vital role in understanding the etiology of some relationship problems. As mentioned by Peter Wolf, David M. Ferguson, John Horwood, and Joseph M. Bowden performed a survey on American women who had abortions and found that more than half said they felt rushed or uncertain about abortion, and 64% reported feeling pressures by others to abort. 65% of the survey respondents reported symptoms of PTSD that they attributed to the abortions, with slightly over 14% reporting all the symptoms for a diagnosis of PTSD. A glimpse at just a few of the calls that came in the week of January 20th, 2019, received by Concepts of Truth International Helpline 24/7, First Responder Helpline, shows the sad reality of this irreversible decision. Raw grief and suffering experienced by so many women and some men following an abortion. One caller has struggled with guilt and depression since her abortion at age 15. She has recovered from alcoholism and overeating and now realizes that they are symptoms of her pain from the abortion. She would like to connect with a group to discuss the effects of her decision. Another caller, a man, was very angry that his ex-girlfriend had 2 abortions without telling him. He thinks about and grieves for his children. They would have been 5 and 6 years old, and he says his heart aches for them. A young woman calls sobbing and shared that she had an abortion 5 years ago and is still feeling overwhelmed, stating, "I thought it would get better, but it hasn't. Sometimes I feel like I am going crazy." This caller's second abortion occurred today while she was home after taking RU-486. It was traumatizing to her because she could see the whole baby and was expecting it to look more like cells or tissue. She stated she wasn't informed on what to expect, now feels very guilty, and regrets her decision. She placed the baby in a little box, for she could not flush it down the toilet. As Christine will address, for women who have endured sexual assault and then become pregnant, they face not only the lasting trauma of the attack, but also the enormity of a decision that impacts the life or death of the child at a time when they are filled with fear and pressured to make a quick decision without being fully informed. Approximately 0.1% of abortions are the results of rape. Men who are involved in relationship with these women must work towards solutions by listening and communicating with their partner, resisting the temptation to run from a difficult situation, and making sure to never pressure a rash decision. As the author of Concepts of Truth curriculum, Concepts of Recovery, the Journey Facilitator's Guide, relates, open quote, "As a professional counselor, I have walked with hundreds of clients through the recovery process after abortion. There are many hurting people needing healing and restoration," end quote. Peace can be found when post-abortion symptoms are recognized and treated. Growth from the traumatic experience can be reached, spiritual and emotional healing achieved, and newfound freedom can be experienced for those willing to delve and heal from their past abortions. For men and women who have chosen to abort their babies, Concepts of Truth International provides compassionate counseling to help them and their loved ones find closure through the grieving process, finding peace and forgiveness in their spiritual faith, and by memorializing their baby. Concepts of Truth provides multidimensional, confidential counseling for women and men suffering from the after effects of an abortion and other sexual trauma, supporting SDGs 3 goals for good health and well-being. In addition, Concepts of Truth educates families on the repercussions of reproductive loss for those considering abortion. Concepts of Truth thus equips each person with the confidence they need to be free from their vulnerability and emotional suffering that impoverishes them and their relationships. We must unite to end the silence, eliminate the shame, and erase the stigma surrounding these issues. Through education, we can research the consequences and the resources available in order to help sustain families and individuals holistically. Through education comes access to the help they deserve and thus healthier lifestyles. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. There is no denying that people suffer from the trauma of reproductive loss every day. If you or someone you know is hurting, Concepts of Truth is here for you. Our 24/7 international hotline is available for anyone in pain. Although the healing process isn't always easy, it allows those who have given up to value themselves. Everyone in this room is broken, and we can all use some healing one way or another, but in our healing, we can find peace and unite together to provide healing for others. When we serve others, we show humility to them. When we teach the concepts of each one teach one, we are helping the person to love themselves enough to give themselves permission to heal from their trauma, to value themselves enough to reach out for help. And then once they heal, to use their freedom and experience of healing to serve someone else who may also be hurting. So we have a cycle of human connection that will help sustain our world of mental health. In contrast, if we don't reach out to others and broken people remain in their hopelessness, then that cycle not only continues, but perpetuates more hopelessness in future generations. If an individual is unable to process the perceived injustice, then there is no hope for healing or a vision of inner peace. Our next panelist is Christine Pelliccio. She's age 18, attends Hawthorne Christian Academy in New Jersey, and she has been involved in her school's student government as head chaplain, and this is her first year as a UN youth representative for Concepts of Truth International. She enjoys running as well as reading at coffee shops. Her mentor is Cynthia Collins, founder, Speak Hope, international speaker, writer, and advocate.
In 2018, Pornhub, a pornography website, was visited 33.5 billion times, averaging about 962 searches per second and 92 million visits per day. 92 million equals the populations of Australia, Poland, and Canada combined. Pornography, defined as the portrayal of sexual acts solely for the purpose of sexual arousal, actually destroys intimacy and breaks apart relationships. Fight the New Drug, an organization that raises awareness and provides scientific research about pornography and its addiction, reports that the more people regularly view pornography, the more they see people as mere objects of pleasure. I was first exposed to it in 5th grade. I quit when my parents caught me. At the time, I was only sorry that I was discovered. As years passed and I tried with it again and struggled with it in my freshman year of high school. As I tried to mask my guilt and shame, I locked myself in to fight this gross habit all alone. I experienced the self-loathing, the isolation, and the darkness of sin. Yet at my deepest point of pain over my selfish desires, God freed me from this entanglement by helping me love Him. And I replaced my love for pornography with a genuine, cultivated love for God and my neighbor by actively trusting and seeking His forgiveness. That is why I can stand here today and talk confidently about the dangers of pornography. Fight the New Drug reveals the brain-changing reality of pornography and states that porn can actually overpower the brain's natural ability to enjoy sexual intimacy with other people, as the brain creates new neural pathways with the release of a protein called delta phos-B. This protein primes the brain to make such strong mental connections between pornography and sexual pleasures that viewers eventually can no longer experience sexual pleasure during intimacy with other people. This same protein, labeled as the molecular switch for addiction, causes long-term addiction to pornography, making it very hard to change the pattern. Studies have shown a strong correlation between men's consumption of pornography and their likelihood to victimize women. In fact, a 2015 peer-reviewed research study that analyzed 22 different studies from 7 different countries concluded that there is, quote, little doubt that on the average, individuals who consume pornography more frequently are more likely to hold attitudes supporting sexual aggression and engage in actual acts of sexual aggression, end quote. Thus, as the everyday porn viewers exponentially fuel the demand for pornography, they also fuel the demand for pornography's inevitable link, human trafficking. As of 2017, 4.8 million people worldwide were sexually exploited as a part of the 99 billion commercial sex trafficking industry. According to recent surveys, 63% of underage sex trafficking victims said they had been advertised or sold online, and 49% of women involved in sex trafficking stated that they were also involved in pornography. So not only are the consumers of pornography destroying themselves and their personal relationships, but the women and children who are exploited in the pornography industry are suffering the tragic effects of forced abortions and prolonged fear and trauma. Senior advisor on trafficking in persons for the U.S. Department of State, Dr. Laura Lederer, states that forced abortion is an especially disturbing trend in sex trafficking, and found that 55% of trafficked women surveyed had had at least one abortion, and 30% had multiple abortions during the time of trafficking. The majority of these women reported that the abortion was not their choice. Additionally, Cindy Collins, founder of Speak Hope, a Christian global outreach that brings healing and hope to those who have suffered the trauma of predatory relationships, abuse, abortion, and abandonment, describes instances where survivors of trafficking were threatened with death if they refused to abort. The victims of sex trafficking not only endure physical consequences, such as forced abortions and the contraction of HIV and AIDS, but also the mental and emotional toll of fear and trauma. Cindy Collins speaks on the experience of victims of trafficking consisting of, quote, deep trauma, not only from the abortion experience, but the deep feelings of regret, because this is a life she never intended to live, and now it's taken the life of herself and her child, a second victim, end quote. In addition, the U.S. Office of the Assistant Secretary for Planning and Evaluation shares how, quote, researchers report that victims often experience multiple layers of trauma, including psychological damage from captivity and fear of reprisals if escape is contemplated, as well as brainwashing, end quote. Therefore, it is not surprising that depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, self-harm, and attempted suicide are common among survivors. It is thus evident that we must not only minister to the physical needs of survivors of sex trafficking, but also provide opportunity for hope, as well as emotional and spiritual healing. God created all people in his image, and thus they have intrinsic dignity and value. Yet women and children are being objectified, victimized, and sexually exploited through pornography and human trafficking, and are in desperate need of social protection policies to reduce their vulnerability. The pornography and human trafficking industries stand in direct opposition to the United Nations goal to eliminate all forms of violence against all women and girls in the public and private spheres, including trafficking and other types of sexual exploitation. Through sexual education, reproductive loss, and sexual trauma counseling programs, Concepts of Truth International creates the opportunity for women, men, and children to know God's truth and make healthy life choices in an effort towards achieving social protection. Concepts of Truth's curriculum on sexual health teaches that, quote, sexual health is living out one's sexuality in true freedom with integrity, purity, and unconditional love, end quote. Concepts of Truth informs students effectively not only of the dangers and damages that affect as of pornography and unhealthy sexual behavior, but also lovingly walks through the healing process of sexual trauma and reproductive loss, while teaching the benefits of a healthy sexual life and encouraging people towards peace and contentment. Concepts of Truth has compassionate and tested educational resources and licensed professional counseling to help survivors, loved ones, or to train you to counsel others. Concepts of Truth effectively teaches that successfully implementing education and holistic healthcare solutions requires that we act. In order to help survivors of sexual trauma heal, there must be awareness of their internal trauma, access to qualified individuals who are able to help give them a voice, communication in processing their past and emotions in a restorative manner, as well as planning for their future, commitment in a reliable relationship with their counselor, as well as the time needed to reintegrate into society and emerge from emotional poverty. Concepts of Truth's counselors and consultants communicate deeply with their clients, instilling in each individual a due sense of human dignity deserving of love. Concepts of Truth is committed to providing each person with the knowledge that will enrich their sexual and mental health and release them from the pain and guilt of past abortions, miscarriage, and sexual abuse, which often causes multidimensional poverty. In addition, Concepts of Truth realizes that, quote, when we process the trauma, we get to decide the takeaways, the direction from here, and how we can or will use this event to empower another person to make healthy life choices, end quote. So, what can we do to act on behalf of these exploited women and children? We must work to advocate social protection policies, accountability of governments, and law enforcement. We must be a voice for the voiceless. We must encourage victims to seek help from organizations like Concepts of Truth and speak up and share their stories so hearts can heal and cycles of sexual trauma can be changed to sustaining future generations. We must continue the conversation on sexual trauma and the resources that are available. You may have noticed that I'm wearing a small jar necklace. Half of the proceeds of this necklace aid local NGOs in rescuing children from sex trafficking in Indonesia. What I found the most interesting is how wearing these jars has given me the opportunity to raise more awareness about human trafficking. Various conversations have been started, all because I chose to wear a simple jar necklace. It is through these conversations that awareness and education have come to others. We are all able in our everyday lives to start this ripple effect of change, of education, to be a voice for sustaining and saving human life. Please, join me in continuing this conversation that will cultivate social protection for those women, children, and families in vulnerable situations worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine, for sharing with us the true magnitude and impact of a thoughtless click of a button. As Christine pointed out, these detrimental harms come at the result of something that American culture has begun to glorify: the pornography industry. It is undoubtedly important for us to educate ourselves on the root of a problem and ensure that we truly address that problem. Education is at the core of finding truth. Now we will hear a spoken word highlighting this very point. Nina Romeo is age 17, lives in New Jersey, and is a homeschool student. She has been involved in speech competition, performance, and theater throughout high school. This is her first year as a UN Youth Representative for Concepts of Truth International, and she hopes to continue using her performing arts passion to influence social change.
Confusion. A young girl with a positive test. At first she feels she's blessed, but then she starts to feel the stress, confusion. She didn't want this as her prom, can't bring herself to tell her mom. She's trying to breathe, saying stay calm, confusion. Working daily, getting no rest. At first she feels she's blessed. She don't know how she'll confess. She knows the child will cause distress, confusion. She starts to hate the growing baby. She's thinking she's got to be hasty, she's got to end it, and maybe, just maybe, confusion. She finds a number she can call. Them, yes, they can end it all. She doesn't want her life to fall, but then she's crying in the stall, confusion. She walks into the eerie room. Medical instruments will serve as the tomb for her new gorgeous little Bloom will never have his own playroom. Confusion. She don't want to go through with it, but feels her faith was truly writ when she was placed and trapped inside this pit. The truth is, if she just had a little guidance, someone to give her clearance, she's not alone, she won't be silenced. Truth. To know that there are those like her who know the pain and hurt like her, who can assure that it will be okay for her. Truth. And this comes through family education. And no, it ain't no vacation, but it leads to a foundation in truth. And those like her who feel alone, who feel they're broken to the bone, who feel their future set in stone, there is this truth. Our group right here provides that faith, provides that truth, provides that grace, provides that education, teaching in impoverished nations, leading women through the pain, through the struggles in his name. Concepts of truth provides that grace, provides that truth, provides that faith, provides that education. Concepts of truth is here for her. They're here for us. They have the cure. Concepts of truth has the education. They carry truth by counseling families and women from nation to nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Education is at the core of truth, and truth is vital to the theme of today's conference, addressing inequalities and challenges to social inclusion through fiscal, wage, and social protection policies. Indeed, truth is at the core of addressing any problem. Ms. Millie Lace will now share our closing remarks and field your questions.
Wow, let's give these youth a great big hand, right? Thank you so much. I also want to thank our adult mentors and for all of their expertise and time, because working with these youth does take a lot of energy and time, because I'm telling you, they can text fast. I'm just so thankful that they have the passion to educate in the truth about life-sustaining families around the world. We trust today that you've been inspired and that you're going to use this information to educate your community, this generation, and future generations. I hope you've learned about some of our resources, our models, and our intervention methods that will truly provide social protection to sustain families and holistic health. I think you will agree that these youth have presented not only from their heart, but from their research and professionalism, and that they want better, to contribute to this international community in serving the world to make it a better place. So at this time, we will take any questions. We have a few minutes, and we're just so thankful that you came. We have an evaluation form. I don't want you to forget that when we end, but and hopefully everyone's signed in. But we'll field any questions you may have. Yes, ma'am.
I'd just like to thank you. It was very wonderfully, and I found it really inspiring.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Natalia. I'm German Youth Delegate to the United Nations, which means that I'm mandated by 16 million young people in Germany to represent them here at the United Nations. And I would just like to open the debate maybe a little bit, because in Germany, when we discuss education about sexual health and reproductive health, we also discuss education about abortion. Because I believe, and that's what German youth told me when we did 50 consultational events with them in Germany, was that unwanted pregnancies can happen to anyone or to all women, basically. What they need is, of course, counseling in any way possible, but also the access to true material, true information about abortions, because what circulates a lot in this world is rumors about abortion. And I would maybe like to hear the stance of the panelists on this. What do you think? Should education about abortion be included in education about sexual health in schools, essentially, or what stance would you maybe take on that?
Hello, and thank you for coming. I would just say that, so Concepts of Truth is not here to debate like what is pro-life, pro-choice. We're here to offer healing and support and education. So we like to say pro-informed choice, so I'm totally with you on the education. I think a big part of what we wanted to emphasize today is that a lot of young women are not informed about the repercussions of that decision that they make and how they may feel afterwards. A lot of women say that a lot of women, once you start to speak to them, talk about their grief, but many feel guilty for feeling that grief and pain because they were told that it would feel relieved. And this is not just a rumor or something that I'm making up. This has come from many stories, people who've called into the helpline. If you want to elaborate more on that.
We've literally had we've had 20,000 callers, men and women from every state in this nation and different parts of the world. And we've never had anyone when they call that they've never told us that they were glad they had it. I mean, they may state that, but then they will go into all their pain and all their questioning and everything. But I think your question is, what do we think about it being inserted into sexual health education as far as the methods of abortion? Is that what I'm hearing? That you would like to educate them on those methods?
Maybe yes, because I feel like if I may just state that those women who are happy about their abortion would certainly maybe not call you. So I feel that it's just important to get this picture of both sides, right?
Right.
In education.
Absolutely.
About abortion.
And so I was going to say, though, we do have education on abortion methods. And so I do agree with you about educating, because I think what I hear many times is that they don't know, and again, the ones that have called, most of them, well, 99.9%, again, we may have had a few that said, that didn't bother them, but most of them say they never saw an ultrasound. They were not informed. They did not know that, say, like an abortion during first trimester was actually, going to be taking arms and legs, just like you heard one of the stories about the RU46. So that's I think our heart is to, like Sophia said, to be pro-informed choice, because everyone has a choice. We just want to make sure that these young women and men are educated in all of this, sexual health and the abortion methods. So yes, okay. Mm-hmm. Will you turn on your? Just turn it on. Thank you.
I believe most of you are affiliated with a faith-based organization or a church.
All these youth?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So I'm just curious as to whether the concept, not necessarily the concept of truth, but the idea of sexual education and the whole person theory is available at your churches.
They can speak up, but I would say it is not.
Yeah,
it is not.
I think that it's really important to have that, though, because within the church, sometimes that is not like talked about as much as it should be. So women that are found in these situations have like to turn elsewhere to find like resources such as the kind that Concept of Truth is offering. So yeah, I definitely think that it's important and that we really need to get this strong like base in the church, but as well as, outside of it. We don't want to just keep it like, inside this.
I understand it should be, it has to be out in the world, but I think it also, has to be part of the education in the church.
Definitely,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
It's
know,
not talked about.
yeah. I know personally for me in my church and in my family, there's never been this huge stigma around it. So it is if you seek counseling in my personal church, but I agree with you totally that it needs to be much more present, not only in church, but everywhere.
Hi, I'm a delegate from the United Nations Association of the United States, and I'm studying international affairs in the Hertie School of Governance in Berlin, Germany. I'm from Irvine, California, and I have a question about the implementation of education about reproductive health and sexual health. I think more in public schools. I came from a public school education in Irvine, and then in Los Angeles as well, where I did college. I'm currently dealing personally with the reproductive loss, and I've dealt with issues of sexual trauma as a representative in my international affairs program. So I'm just would like to thank you so much for offering these perspectives. It's definitely not discussed about, so I just wanted to ask the panelists about their perspectives on, implementation.
Thank you. They're totally welcome to make comment, but implementation, again, this is why we have to promote more education to governments, to churches, to NGOs. It needs to be broad-based, the implementation of it. We personally, our NGO, in our local community and in the state, our sexual health curriculum is in public schools. It's not in every public school, but it is accepted. It is accepted every time we have ever met with a school administrator. They have always said, we need this, and they are accepting it. One thing that I know for a fact is some of the programs they have tried earlier that they don't feel that they were successful. And actually, I brought this. I'm glad I did. I have some comments from some, and there are other NGOs in our state that actually have implemented, they go into the public schools and have educated their school administrators about it. Here are some comments of what some of the students have filled out an evaluation about the program. They're learning that STDs can be transferred orally. Many times there are 7th graders and they think that safe sex can be oral sex. They think that. And then we teach them, and sexual health education programs need to teach them, no, you can spread STDs that way. But they don't understand that. They have not been informed. I'll just read some of these. I learned how babies develop in the womb and how it works during the 9 months of pregnancy. We teach prenatal development. We teach that. They need to know. They need to know. I learned having multiple partners decreases your chances to have a lasting relationship. I learned that there's a thing such as called secondary virginity. I learned the true meaning of pure and the true ways of protecting is. Y'all are doing just fine. This person says, sex should be something between you and your spouse or one partner for the rest of your life. Its purpose is not only for reproduction, but it's for bonding. It's for becoming closer. I want to read the last couple. One says, be responsible with your sexual health because you might be choosing the father of your child forever and the future of your child. Viral STDs have no cure. A relationship should have unconditional love. We actually teach them a definition of unconditional love. Are they getting that in their relationships? And they sit there in the class, and many times they're just realizing, no, I don't have that in this relationship. And here's just the last couple. I learned to respect myself as well as others more. We've had less violent outbreaks in some of the schools because of this sexual health curriculum. And here's another one. Well, from this program, I learned that while having sex while you're young can cause a lot of health consequences. Overall, I think this program just saved a lot of lives, including my own. So, we are trying to implement it as much as we can. And again, there's a lot of great sexual health programs out there. I don't want to say, we have the only cure. We don't. But I think our method and our model very much could be replicated. Actually, for anyone who signs in, we're going to offer a digital, we have a digital recording of our 6 90-minute lessons, and it's a project that we don't have completed extensively yet, but we felt like for a limited amount of time, maybe we could offer everyone who attended, and then y'all can view, you can give us feedback. We're open. Anyone else? Did you want to say something? Sure. It is 11, so we have.
Oh, okay. So I just wanted to add to what Millie said about the implementation of education, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the hope in making this a sustainable development goal is that when we permeate the schools with the basic information that these kids don't know, it's in hope that they'll become parents that educate their children in the home, and that will no longer need that extensive sexual health education in the public schools, and that will be happening within the context of family more widespread in the future.
That's really a good comment. I just want to say, too, we recently trained 4 new school consultants from our local NGO, and one of the young school consultants said that when she was younger, she was having sex from the age of 12, and her boyfriend would sneak in through the window. And so she now is sitting her children down because of what she's learning, teaching the curriculum. She's now educating her children. And she said, I wish I just would have known. I wish I would have known when I was in school. So anyway, but thank you all. Our time is up, but we welcome your comments on the evaluation. And like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. So thank you again for coming. And we have lots of other resources on our website at internationalhelpline.org or conceptsoftruth.org. Thank you. You didn't get the sign in? Okay. What happened was you have it, we had the sign in on the iPad and it was stuck, but we got it unstuck. And then we started passing around some papers also. And we also have a copy of our written statement in the